Great. Well, welcome everybody to this meeting of the Concord Municipal Light Board. We appreciate your coming today. This meeting is going to focus on ETS systems and how we proceed with them going forward. But before we get to that, there's a couple of matters we need to address. The first one is to let you know, because of issues related to Zoom bombing, we have to be very careful about who has access to speak. So if you're an attendee at the meeting, your audio has been put on mute. If you want to speak later, raise your hand and Jason will unmute your microphone and you'll be able to ask your question or make your comment. Second, we have some minutes to take care of, and let me turn that over to John.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I distributed minutes from our September 23rd meeting and haven't received any comments back. So if there aren't any comments, I would move that we approve those minutes.
Second.
And Bianca. John.
Yes.
Brian.
Yes.
Is Chris here?
No.
No. And I approve the minutes and we have one abstention from Chris. So thank you. So let me tell everybody how we're going to work with talking about ETS in an organized way that will get everybody the information that we need to come up with a good resolution for how to proceed with ETS going forward. We're first going to hear a presentation from Laura Scott about the history of ETS, the number of ETS customers, the financial implications of ETS. And during that period, I request the board to only ask clarifying questions and questions of information. I don't want any board members during this initial period to make any proposals or suggestions for how we proceed with ETS going forward. The first part of the meeting is to just get the information on the table. We're then going to go into a rate hearing, and before the board discusses ETS, we will first hear public comments from anybody who's here who wants to comment on ETS and how we should proceed with it going forward. And then after that public comment period, then the board will discuss how to proceed. Does anybody on the board have any questions about that? Okay, well, let's turn it over to Laura then.
All right, I will share my screen. I'll just note too, Warren, that Chris is here now, so we do have all board members.
Very good.
All right, can everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. I'm just going to start, and then Laura's going to pick up when we get into the analysis. Just a very, very basic overview of what we're talking about, as I don't know what board members' past experiences with ETS heaters. ETS are electric resistance heaters that use these ceramic or brick cores to heat up at a time when electricity is cheap and store that heat in a well-insulated container. And then when electricity is more expensive, they can stop being charged and then output that heat when it's cold. And they can be very small units like this one that could be placed in a room. They can be very large and actually provide heating for a whole house. So that's the basic technology of the electric thermal storage. Sometimes it's electrothermal storage, sometimes it's electric thermal storage. The principle, as I mentioned, of operation is that they charge up with this heat when electricity with demand is low, and then they release that heat later and throughout the day. Laura, can you weigh in on when those units are programmed to charge, at what hours?
Yes.
Are allowed to charge?
So year round, they're able to charge from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. In the winter, when the temperature drops below a certain degree, they are additionally allowed to run between 1 and 4 more hours. And CMLP strategically chooses which of those 1 to 4 hours they will charge to be the lowest cost time periods of the day and the least likely to cause peak-related expenses. So that's usually between 12 and 4 p.m., 12 and 2, 11 and 1, somewhere around the midday time period. And that's, we'll show a chart later that shows these hours.
So in 1998, the light plant began offering rebates for ETS heaters. And the goal here was to support beneficial electrification while also not adding to the expensive winter peak times. And sometimes there's kind of 2 peaks in a winter day. But winter electricity is a lot more expensive in general than summer electricity. The rebates were $100 a kilowatt, and the average and median size was around that 29 to 30 kW size. We also issued a guarantee that said that if people were not satisfied with their ETS heater or heaters during the first heating season, the CMLP would remove it at no cost to the customer and then reimburse them for the equipment, not the installation, but all of the equipment costs. And then I'll mention that when the program started in 1998, the ETS users were charged only the energy charge of 4.5 cents a kilowatt hour, rising to about 10.43 cents today. So Laura, why don't you walk us through this slide here?
Sure. So we have about 140 customers who installed these ETS units. And this chart shows you over time how many KW were installed. So between June of 1998 and roughly May of 2006, 35 customers installed 500 kilowatts. So those systems in the beginning tended to be a little bit smaller. Then the program started to take off in 2006. I don't know this for a fact, but I suspect it had to do with advertising on CMLP's part about the program. And you can see things really start to take off. And between 2006 and 2015, 104 more customers installed another 4 megawatts of load. So this is pretty significant load on CMLP system. You know, we only average about 16 to 20 megawatts an hour anyway. And so this is a pretty big portion of our load.
At the time, we found some marketing materials, not all the way back to 98, but in the years since then that show, and I've got a newsletter here, for example, that was from 2013, where there was some information about ETS. And these are some of the pictures in the newsletters that you can see, but they were kind of advertised in different places, and there were claims that were comparing the costs for ETS heaters. That one on the right there says that, for example, this winter, the cost of heat at 3,000 square foot house is projected to be this, this, and this, showing that ETS heat was, $1,000 cheaper than natural gas and, $2,000 cheaper than heating oil. And then also just touting the benefits and the guarantee. On the left, you see, there's a guarantee. If you're not completely satisfied, we'll remove it at no cost. So CMLP was really backing these rebates in this program for customers. This is a distribution of the ETS system size by customer count to kind of give people an idea of the size systems that people were installing. And these are kilowatt systems sizes on the left, on the x-axis, and the number of customers on the y-axis. And you can see that the most popular size is this 37.2, kind of around the 80 to 100 mark. You see there's a steady line there, along with, I think that I went back a slide. Somewhere in the mid 20s, and then there's a size in the high 40s. Anything else on this one, Laura?
No.
This just shows a chart of the electric rates when we went live with ETS in 1998 versus what the residential rate was at the time, and then how it's changed over time. So today, the ETS rate is 10.43 cents. The residential rate is 20.713 cents per kilowatt hour. And you can see that it's actually a wider spread than it was at the inception. and that at the inception, you know, it was a little more, I think it was 55% of the residential rate, and now it's about 50% of the residential rate. We did a lot of analysis, and I credit Laura for her work and diligence on this to answer some questions about payback and ROI on these units. And I just wanted to explain why this is such a complicated conversation. There are a lot of variables that impact somebody's ROI and then the cost that they would have faced. So obviously, was it a really big system or a really small system? Bigger systems might require ducting or other complicated expenses that a small area unit would not have. Then what is the fuel system that they switched from? Some of those records are hard to get because we can get them from our vision system that the assessors use, but that data is only refreshed every few years or when people pull permits. So the type of heating that it shows today might not be the type of heating that they actually converted from or maintained at the time. So that payback period will swing depending on whether they had natural gas or oil or even electric heat at the time. And then different people paid different amounts for installation costs and maintenance costs. Some people had their units had issues and they had to replace, you know, portions, and so we had to kind of annualize or average those costs. And then the life of their old system, did they rip out a system and replace it with this, and how old was it, and you know, what did they lose any value there? And there's just a lot of other variables that we found while looking into this. Some folks were really nice enough to give us and share with us some receipts and information that helped us calculate averages and costs on these. The other thing we'll mention is if we looked at the EIA, I believe, who has information on propane and oil prices over time, you can see that until 2000, the prices for that period of time, for that 10-year period, is actually pretty stable, and that around 2000 is when you see a lot more volatility in energy prices. And so it's not just like you're assuming that there's a steady electric rate compared to something that's steady. It is highly variable, and even from supplier to supplier, there can be a $1 a gallon difference between price. And so we want to caution everybody that when we give average numbers, that these are averages, and that some people may have had a different experience than others. So Laura, why don't you walk us through this particular slide here?
Sure. So what we looked at here was basically a rough cost for an ETS system. And as Jason said, there are going to be people on this call that are going to say, oh, I paid way more than that, or I paid way less. But we did try to capture some, rough averages, and we used 24,000 or 24,500 for the ETS system costs, less the rebate for a net cost of 21,500. We took a propane or oil boiler replacement cost of roughly $9,000. And then we looked at the difference to operate the ETS and the cost to operate, that actually should say oil over there instead of propane, but that's number two oil for a number two oil boiler. And what we actually did, this is sort of a rough average, but we did do a month by month, year by year. And Jason, if you'll let me share my screen for a moment, I'll just show quickly, some of the detail we went through.
Yeah, I think you should be able to share.
Okay, so share, and I'm going to show you. So this is, can everybody see an Excel spreadsheet here?
We got it.
Okay. So this is ETS volume by month for a house that uses 24,000 kilowatt hours a year. Again, some will use more, some will use less. We took what CMLP was charging them per year. It started off at the this starts in year 2005, not in 1998. It was 5 cents back then. So the total ETS annual cost was about $1,200. And we took, as Jason said, the EIA data for two oil. And so the difference between the ETS cost of $1,200 and the two oil cost of $2,662 was a $1,462 variable fuel cost savings per year between the ETS unit and the theoretical oil unit. And you can see over the years that varied It depended if, oil did go up in certain years. And in those cases, the savings might have been as much as 2,000. But in other years, as the ETS system cost rose, the savings could have been as little as $500 or $300 in this case. So what we did is we took the average differential between the two costs for different people. And some people who had paid more for ETS, the difference between the ETS capital and installation cost and the oil installation and capital cost was as much as $11,000 up front. For some, it might have been as little as 6,000. But we ran at a 10% weighted average cost of capital, a PV of these savings over the years to find out when this cash flow became positive. The cash flow is the sum of the initial capital cost and the future savings in a present value calculation. So you can see for the median case of a $9,000 upfront increase capital and installation cost, the payback would have been about 9 years. In a really low case where the cost differential to install the ETS wasn't that great, it might have been as little as 5 years. But then others who had more costly installations, the payback could have been as high as 15 years. And again, these are based on averages and assumptions, and people's individual scenarios probably differed significantly. But this is sort of, we tried to put pen to paper and, come up with some numbers for you to talk about.
Okay, let me share again. All right, I did change it to oil and just
Thank you.
clarify that the ETS cost was after the rebate, not before. And then this just shows that on average, as you just demonstrated, it was about a 9-year payback. One of the things that has been brought up before by ETS users themselves is that this problem, the problem of ETS, the number of customers in the ETS systems after the rebate stopped in 2014 is going away. And this tries to quantify based on a 20-year life of these systems when that is. The blue line shows you today, and to the left of the blue line is about the number of systems that have aged out or have been replaced. And then to the right of the blue line shows you the number of systems that would be reaching that 20-year lifespan and shows you kind of the dates that they would be. So you can see that the next 4 years have a significant drop from about 80% of systems to down to 40% of systems that will be going away in the next 5 years. And then you can see it's kind of a steady trail out to the year 2034 when the last system would.
Jason, if you could clarify that assumes these systems are all retired in 20 years, which is not necessarily the case.
Correct. Some are replaced well before 20 years, others
Right.
are kept and maintained longer than 20 years. So
Yes.
just an average. But if we assume that the number that you see to the left of the line is pretty close to the number of customers that have dropped out of the program. So it's probably indicative of the estimated usable lifetime of these units, but you're right, some people could absolutely extend the life of their unit. In terms of the history, the ETS rate, again, as I showed, has doubled since 1998, and there's definitely led to some uncertainty about the future of these rates. Some people have left their systems when they're functioning just because they don't know what the future will bring with the ETS rate. And moving to a strictly, time of day rate could nearly double the current rates for ETS users. And in terms of the impact, Laura, can you walk us through this slide here?
Yeah, this is a slide that UFS, our cost of service study consultants prepared over the summer that showed how much more each ETS customer would pay per year if they moved from their current rate to the full time of day rates. That would be the phase 2 time of day rates. And you can see some people, and these are folks who don't use as many kilowatt hours that have smaller systems, the rate shock would be, less than $100. But for quite a few folks who really use their ETS and use a lot of kilowatt hours, you can see customer number 78, would be paying about $2,750 more per year under the time of day rate than they would under their current rate.
We want
And Laura, do you have an average?
Not off the top of my head. You can sort of do this with your eyes, and it's probably, I don't know, maybe $900, 800.
Yeah, I think they give us this presentation, Brian, but they didn't give us the Excel behind it. So we could probably figure it out or ask for more data, but I think she's right around where it's at. In terms of alternatives or impacts, I'll mention again that the ETS program does provide the best bang for its buck for all ratepayers in terms of the energy that these systems are using is really off-peak energy. And we found that, like, on average, the ETS customers for energy alone, we're not talking about distribution, they're basically buying energy or paying for energy at about a half a cent per kilowatt hour more than the average user because of their off-peak purchases. That doesn't count distribution. So obviously that muddies the water, but they're buying electricity at a time when it's definitely off-peak. And then, a logical path for a lot of these customers is to heat pumps. And just remember that heat pumps use a lot of electricity during peaks, and they also can qualify for up to a $10,000 rebate if it's for a whole home heat pump. Laura, walk us through this slide showing the heat pumps and the ETS load.
Okay, the bars, the orange bars, represent the load for an actual heat pump customer on January 22nd of this year, which was a particularly cold day. You can see, I mentioned that on a cold day, they would run up to 4 hours more. The x-axis is hour ending. So the number 1 represents the amount of electricity used between midnight and 1 a.m. You can see that CMLP is controlling these, and they're shutting off at hour ending 7, and then they're off, and then they come back on for the allowed recharge period during the day, and then they're off again. You can see that our peak, which happens, between 5 and 7 or 5 and 8 p.m. in the winter, there's virtually no load from the ETS customers, and thereby they're not causing us to pay any peak-related expenses for capacity or transmission. The single line is an actual heat pump customer on that day, on January 22nd. And so you can see, as you would expect, that their load is much more ratable, but they are using, roughly 4% of their load during those peak hours, and therefore causing us to pay peak-related expenses, which is expensive, as you know, and those rates are rising.
And they would be paying on peak pricing with a heat pump.
Yes. This was of course January 2025, so the rates were different, but yes, in the future.
Okay, so that was our last slide. Warren, do you want to see if the board?
Yeah, hey, that was very helpful to get all that information out there. I'm now asking any clarifying questions from the board. Chris, what else do you want to know?
Oh, I'm curious about I feel like there's something incongruous I'm not understanding. So the ETS system is using the electricity at off-peak times, and that's good. But our off-peak pricing is making it more expensive for them, and that's bad. And how do those two things go together?
Today's pricing is very low.
Well, Chris, you said the off-peak pricing is making it more expensive for them.
Or the time of day pricing is making it more expensive. So they're not only using it at the off-peak times.
Okay, so
their off-peak times are different than our off-peak times in the new time of day.
So when the program was launched, the idea behind it, okay, whether you agree with it or not, was that this was new load.
Yeah.
And therefore they didn't have to, and they were already paying distribution expenses. And so to make the ETS units be cost effective, they were not paying anything towards distribution. Okay.
And now they will be.
And now under time of day, they would be paying the full distribution cost. So that's what
Got it. Okay.
Increase.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions? Okay, so
Warren.
So I think just to yeah, so the rates now are 50% lower than the R1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And under time of day, would they continue to be 50% lower than the time of day rate?
No.
No.
They would be just stepped up to
Well,
R1.
the issue is we haven't decided what's going to happen to the ETS customers under time of day. And, on the two extremes, one extreme is they just go on to time of day like everyone else and pay the same rates as all of the residential customers. On the other hand, we continue the current ETS rate at its current rates. So those are, the parameters in which we're operating, or we could do something different. And that's what we're going to try to figure out today.
And today we'll be discussing the rate for ETS right now and as well as during time of day? Or what's the
We're talking about what happens to these customers when next April we go to time of day. What happens? Do we retain a special ETS rate? Do we just put them on the same rates with everyone else? Do we do something different? That's what we're going to try to figure out. And
Okay.
there's a range of different possibilities. Okay?
I just want to mention about 2014. 10 years ago, this exact same discussion was happening with the board, and we were talking about, I actually still have it, the handout from Cassandra, the person that was in Laura's position beforehand. And it was, cost recovery was 51.7% back then. And they wanted by 2024 to get up to 100% cost recovery. And the board punted. The board decided not to make a decision and left things as they were, collecting a bit more in distribution. And it's been a long program. We've had no new customers since the last 10 years. And this costs other ratepayers and
Hey, Brian, I want to cut you off. I don't want any comments or opinions from the board at the moment. We're saving that for the discussion after.
Okay.
Before we have, and you're going to have plenty of opportunity to present your point of view. But before we do that, I want to go into the rate hearing and give public comments an opportunity to be made first. Can we have a motion to go, if there are no other clarifying questions? Can we have a motion to go into a rate hearing? And I'm terrible at motions, so I don't know what I'm supposed to say.
I'll move that we begin a rate hearing on the ETS rates.
Is there a second?
I'll second. Is that the proper wording?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Wait, John, you have your hand up.
I'm unmuting him.
Oh,
I'm just trying to go off mute.
okay, great. So, John, could you vote on whether we're to go into
Yes.
here? Brian,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes,
Bianca. Oh, you
she's
may
on
be.
mute.
Okay, great.
Usually is a thumbs up. Yep.
Okay, great. And I'm yes as well. So we are now in the rate hearing, and what we want to do before the board considers what to do in this situation and how to proceed, we want to give the public an opportunity to make comments. And because of the issue of everybody being on mute, if you want to speak, raise your hand and I will call on you, and Jason will unmute you. Peter Fandel.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, we sure can.
Okay, Peter Fandel, 10 Shirley Street. First, just a clarification. ETS customers have always, since the beginning, every year paid the same distribution cost as other ratepayers because we have 2 meters. So it's only for the ETS use where we were spared distribution costs. Just that out of the way. In my particular case, I've had ETS for 12 years, and there was no end date for the special rate, but I would hope it would be at least whatever the average lifespan of a heating system is. I personally am planning to replace my heating system. I don't want an inefficient system. I want the best there is, which is heat pump, and so I'm looking into it. But I'd rather not have my hand forced earlier than is good for me in terms of the economics. I guess that's it for now. Other people, please chime in.
Great. Thank you very much. Josh Galper.
Hi, thank you. Josh Galper, 65 Stone Root Lane. Thanks for the presentation. I thought that was great. I had a question. I'm an ETS user. When I first signed up, I had understood that part of our deal was that we were helping the town lower costs because we were load balancing. We were using up off-peak power that you needed to get rid of in some way. It doesn't seem to me like that was factored into the presentation, that we're also providing a service by being high users of power off-peak. Did I miss something there, or was something missed in the presentation? If I could get an answer. Thank you.
Jason or Laura, do you want to respond to that? This is asking about the presentation.
Or yeah, can you address that?
Yeah, sure. So I think we did mention in the in that chart we showed where it showed the load of a heat pump versus an ETS customer, and we mentioned that being able to use electricity during those off-peak hours is a benefit to the light plant and does not incur any peak related costs, which are very significant. And so, yes, you are correct. It does provide a service. Back when everyone was paying the same energy rate as we do now before we get to time of day, let's say that the energy rate is 6 cents or 8 cents. Because the ETS load shape is cheaper to serve, by them paying the same energy rate as the R1 customer, they are in effect paying a little bit of distribution because they're paying a higher energy rate than they're really causing. So yes, you are correct, and I acknowledge that, and I hope that came across somewhat in the presentation, but if not, I'm saying it now.
I would also clarify though that like sometimes we talk about solar saturation and having excess energy and no place to put it. That's not the case for this particular thing. It's not like, this energy needs to go somewhere and this is a service in that way. But Laura's correct in just in terms of the benefit of using that power at that time.
Okay. Al Iverson.
Sorry, Laura, in a previous meeting, we've gone through the analysis of this. It was about 8 months, a year ago. And you had said that the savings in expenses was almost negligible from that peak shaving, from moving load, compared to what was being collected for the rate.
So
What you said just now seems to contradict that.
So the energy cost is year over year, hour after hour, about 0.5 cent, but that can vary a lot. On the cold days that we just looked at in January with that chart, the hourly cost differential was about 2 cents to serve those just on that day on January 22nd.
Yeah.
But month after month, it's about 50 points, which is 0.5 cent. So that's 0.5 cent. And that doesn't count for, capacity and transmission expenses. That's purely just the energy cost.
Yeah. I mean, the issue is, it seems like there's no doubt that the ETS customers are providing a service and it has some economic benefits to CMLP. In part, the issue is, are those benefits greater or less than the discount that the ETS customers are getting too? Hal Iverson.
Morning, everyone. I have one question concerning the payback period. In my way of thinking, when I have recovered my installation costs. I'm at square zero. I have not received a financial benefit from installing ETS. It's only from that day forward that I begin to get a return on investment over and above what I invested. Am I
That is correct.
okay? Okay, so the payback period that's being discussed here is just the length of time it takes to make us whole before having installed ETS becomes a financial advantage. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you for that. First, I want to say that several ETS user group members were not able to be here and asked me to just make note of their interest and the fact that they wanted to be here to have their comments heard. Paul Blair, 135 Partridge Lane, Tracy Zellman, 88 Ledge Rock Road, Laura Levan, 58 Nimrod Road. Their comments are all the same. Number one, they felt they were providing a service to the town when they adopted ETS, that they were being good citizens and thinking not only of themselves, but the town as a whole. And they think there's a trust issue here. And if the board raises ETS rates, it will feel to them and to me and to many other members as a betrayal of a trust. So that I think is the basic issue that we are here to present. Julie Goronstein, 734 Barrett Mill Road, bought a house 4 years ago with an ETS system. And she sent me an email to say that if ETS is moved to the time of day rate, they are considering switching back to gas. So I just wanted to make note of those 4 comments. It is a trust issue. I mean, none of us have ETS because we went out and found it and decided we wanted it. It was marketed to us by the light plant, and we bought in. Now the board holds all the cards. We have no agency, but we have ETS systems in our homes, and we're faced with the prospect of either big increases in operating costs or even bigger costs to remove ETS and move on to heat pumps, which we would all, almost all, I'm sure, prefer to have in our homes. And in fact, I don't have ETS in my home anymore. 1 week ago, my heat pump system, my new heat pump system was commissioned, and it's been running for a week. It cost me $50,000. And full disclosure, I'm using the pre-rebate cost for dramatic effect. $50,000. I could have dropped a new heat pump into my ETS hybrid system. ETS is was my backup heat. That would have cost me $19,000. But I started the process of switching over to full heat pumps months ago, and it was because of rate uncertainty. It was because a big part of it was rate uncertainty. I couldn't rely on the current rate to support the the value proposition of ETS heating. Um,
Hey, Hal, you should probably wrap up.
okay, I have wrapped up. It's a trust issue, guys. We shook hands. There was never any talk about this ETS rate being conditional in any way or time limited in any way. And we're asking you to, keep your word. That's all.
Thank you. Peter Monahan.
Yep. Hi, everybody. Peter Monahan, 203 Monson Road. My unit was installed in 2015. And so that happened to be the height of the oil prices at the time. So I don't think I've hit the payback period yet at all. And what I'm hearing proposed is extremely unfair, like a rate shock of an average of $1,000. Perhaps I'm dying to know which customer I am on that chart that Laura showed. Possibly 2,500 or 3,000. I forget what the top number was. That's not how you deprecate things. You deprecate things over time. You don't just suddenly do it. And like Hal said, this was a promise that there was no deprecation schedule. And I also haven't heard what problem you're actually trying to solve here. If for the select few here that are gonna, pay $1,000 more a year, like so that the 6,000 or so customers can save $15 a year, like are those people really banging on the table for this change? I highly doubt it. So that's it.
Thank you. Dick Robinson.
So I think my ETS system is about 18 years old. I initially responded to the enthusiasm of the light plant for the ETS principle. And it seemed like it was a promise in perpetuity. I couldn't quite make it out, but now I feel like I'm sort of dug in and there's nowhere to go except I actually recently I was looking for air conditioning in one room and these guys offered to price heat pumps for the whole house and it was $50,000. So that's a big leap. In addition, I am a contractor and I'm retired now, but about 10 years ago, we did it's about a 3,300 square foot house over in Canantum, 195 Heathbridge Road. And on my recommendation, that homeowner put in heat pumps, put in the ETS system for a radiant floor. And he has loved it. But I mean, in his case especially, he is going to be on the high end of your range of costs. So I wasn't able to connect with him. I think he's away on vacation right now, but I'd like to speak for him too, in that this does not quite seem above board. That's it.
Thank you. Linda Chen and Sanford Feeman, one of you, and also Josh Galper, just to let you know, I'm giving new people a chance to talk before we go back to someone who's spoken already, and I'll give you a chance after all the new people have spoke. Linda or Sanford?
I'm Sanford. Can you hear me?
Yep, got you.
I don't see my picture, but that's good because it's early in the morning. I'm an ETS user. Our system is over 20 years old. And I want to address some of the things unrelated to the cost, even though the rate is the issue here. I'm not anti-electricity. I have an electric car. We have a lot of electric appliances in the house. I recently got invited to change my electric car discount program to a new program which allows the town to stop charging my electric car in terms of peak demand. It's a new provision, And it says to me that someone is worried that in the future, there's going to be peak demand and you're going to have to turn some people off. We are you candidates for that. You can turn off ETS charging because we do it off peak and it's stored up. And if you need to turn it off for a couple of hours during peak demand, you can do that to us. And we also have separate meters. So as opposed to having electricity that you don't know what to do with, what I sense is this giant move to heat pumps and more electric things, and Concord is not allowing you to hook up any more gas in new construction. Everyone's being moved to electricity. We're going to be experiencing needs to cut down on demand, and we are. I think you should be encouraging us. The second thing is the ETS system is entirely indoors. We just put a heat pump in on our third floor, and it's outdoors. And I asked them how long it's going to last, and with a very straight face, they said, you're going to have to replace it within 15 years. It's outdoors. It has a lot of moving parts. It goes on and off. 15 years. So that's what that you have to factor that cost in if you want to move me to heat pumps. I'm not sure I'll be alive in 15 years, but whoever gets this house is going to have to put in new heat pumps if they go to heat pumps. So I'm very suspicious of this move to heat pumps, just as I was suspicious of the move to compact fluorescent light bulbs. Remember that when everyone had to buy compact fluorescent light bulbs and then we're all left hanging because it turned out to be environmentally unfriendly. So my points are, just to summarize as quickly as I can, the life of the system, it's indoors, it has no moving parts, it can last a really long time. I suspect that if you're not thinking about peak demand in the future and the need to turn people off, you should be, because that's everyone switching to electricity. There's going to be much, much more demand. Those are my 2 points. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Curtis Geckel.
Yes, hello. Thank you. 44 Blue Jay Drive. We have a whole house ETS unit. I moved up from New York ballpark 22 years ago. I don't know exactly when we switched over to ETS, but just new to town, and we're getting advertised quite a bit from the light plant to do the right thing by the town. We had no reason to do anything different. We had an oil furnace, oil heat. We don't have natural gas in my part of town, so the other option was propane, which the house actually has. That's how the stove operates. So anyway, to do the right thing, we did switch it over to ETS, which is, again, for the entire house. So that entailed removing an oil furnace, removing an oil tank, removing the oil, and also doubling the amperage to the house, since my present, what I had at the time, wouldn't be insufficient to run the ETS. So there's substantial cost for me to do, I'm going to say, the right thing for the town. And again, we already had propane on the property as we do today, so that was an easy option. So since I looked at my bills, it was close to $700 for me for last January, it's over $700 for February, this past February 2025. So this is 2 months of bills. During January, we used over 6,000 kilowatts for the month. So the town looking to potentially change something or do something different really goes against the agreement that, I made with the town via the advertising the town put in place, the number of phone calls I had with the town to evaluate something I never heard of in my life called ETS. That was something brand new. So I got on board with the idea that the town was pushing something that they were going to stay to continue to support that for the long term. So that's how I made my conscious decision. And we used to have the ETS there today, and I see no reason right now to pull it out. It's working fine. So,
Thank you. Tristan Forsythe.
Good morning. I am Tristan Forsythe. I'm at 57 Central Street. I'm not from Concord originally. I'm a veteran. I just got out of the active duty Air Force. My wife is active duty at Hanscom Air Force Base. She's a commander there. We fell in love with Concord because of things like this, like the civic engagement that you're inviting today, which I appreciate very much. I just wanted, anecdotally for our family, we would not be able to afford to live here we would not be able to keep living here and enjoy the amazing fruits of your hard work and the town's civic engagement and hard work if rates were to go up for us. So this is, I appreciate the quorum and being able to talk about this. It does have legitimate impact on families. And part of our calculation in moving here was our monthly costs because we don't make much as active duty members. So just wanted to throw that in the ring and thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you very much. Garrett. Garrett T.
Garrett, I've asked you to unmute. There should be a button on your screen. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Tom Garrett, 475 Old Marlboro. I switched to a whole house system from oil after being encouraged and incentivized by the town to do it. After that point, I also built a garage and have a room above it and was encouraged to put a ETS unit in that as well. So I have two separate units in the house. And I want to get back to the issue of trust. For me also, I feel that we made a pledge to the town and the town made a pledge to us to get into this technology and to use it. And I want to make sure that we continue to honor that pledge.
Thank you. David DePice. And you have to unmute. You're still unmuted. There you go.
Okay, thank you. David Dappas, 169 Main Street. Thank you to the board and Laura for this. I want to make a technical point that looks forward to the band that you, Warren, were referring to between zero subsidy and current. Roughly 30 kilowatt hours equals a gallon of oil in terms of in-house heating. And if you're talking about 10 cents a kilowatt hour, that's $3 a gallon of oil, which is about where it is now. I think it's 280 something. If you go up to 15 or 20 cents, then you're charging people who were persuaded to use this, the equivalent of $6 at 20 cents. And, it seems to me basically unfair. I understand costs. I'm an economist, but at the end of the day, there should be some balance between people that thought they were saving themselves money and doing the town a favor, and just completely switching to something that strikes me as really turning the tables on them. And that's all I'll say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and sorry that I mangled your name. We have two folks who've spoken already. Let me go to Josh Galper, but only say something that hasn't been said already.
Yes, I'll be very quick. Thank you. I just wanted the board to be aware that if you do choose to significantly increase our rates, and you are counting on us to eat up that off-peak power, which then provides a benefit to other town town electric users, many of us will leave. So just to consider that if you do raise our rates, we will probably quickly move off our ETS systems, and you will lose the presumed benefit that we've been providing. Thank you.
Thank you. And Peter, and the same guidance to you.
Yes. Again, Peter Fandel, 10 Shirley Street. There was, so Laura, in your presentation, we were pretty clear that the cost to us of the rate change will be somewhere around $1,000 a year. And somebody stated what the cost would be to the other 6,000 ratepayers, but I wanted to hear it from you, from the board. Roughly, what would it cost the other 6,000 ratepayers if you were to hold to your commitment of the special rate for ETS? And finally, one quick comment is just I think that ETS will die a natural death on its own. Let it happen on its own time instead of going back on your commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to give Pamela Dritt the last word. Sanford, I'm going to have to cut you off because I do want to get to board deliberations here. Pamela Dritt, you haven't had a chance to speak.
Thank you, Pamela, 13 Concord Green. Everything's economic, so when doing the right thing, like all electric heat costs money, most people will do the wrong thing, especially if most of the costs of doing the wrong thing, like climate change and carbon pollution, are not borne by the person making the decision. It's borne by all of us. And these thermal heat pumps are like batteries. Batteries the town can control. The savings for peak shaving of this benefit everyone. Not just in our town, but the whole world. We should encourage them and not by giving them, because we as a municipal light plant have this rare power, by giving them economic incentives. Also, fairness. When we make agreements as a town, we need to honor them. We don't want to be like Trump, withdrawing from the Iran nuclear treaty and the Paris Accord because he thought the terms were awful. If we make agreements with our citizens, we need to honor them, or our government isn't trusted. And also, I want to point out that we can raise the rates, but not to the extent that it would make it beneficial economically for people who have gas hookups to go back on gas. We need to make our electric rates so high for those who are using gas, as opposed to those who are using all electric. Because if we don't, we will never get people off gas. So
thank you very much, Pamela. Thank you. We're going to go in a minute to board comments, but I wanted to put this into context here. What we're trying to do at the board is to figure out what is the right and the appropriate thing. We're not starting from a starting point of saying our goal is to screw ETS customers, but it's not so easy to figure out what the right way to go is here. And I do want to make one defense of the board and this is from before my time, so I'm not trying to defend myself. I've sometimes heard comments from ETS customers saying that it's been unfair that over the past 5 or 10 years, the ETS rate has been raised. And if you look at the data that Laura presented, it seems very clear that the ETS rate has been raised roughly in proportion to the rates for all other electric. So it's not like ETS customers have been asked to take on a disproportionate share of rising electricity costs and distribution costs and so on. But in any case, now we need to figure out what do we do about this conundrum here. And I do want to hear comments and questions from the board. Bianca, you're first.
Yeah, I actually just had a clarifying question for Laura. I think one of the other ETS customers had mentioned this as well. You did do a presentation maybe last year about the benefits of ETS, which at the time it didn't show that there were any benefits to the town any longer, or that the estimated benefits hadn't come through. But is there a cost today for the town? And yes or no? I guess it seems like from what I understood that it was kind of net zero, like no cost at all. But I just wanted to clarify that.
So this, I believe this is similar to the question Brian asked, and I don't have that presentation in front of me, but to my recollection and my recent analysis, both show that on a year-round, year in, year out basis, the energy cost to serve the ETS load shape is about 0.5 cent lower than the energy cost to serve the residential load shape. But what we're not talking about here, which is much more impactful, is the cost, the peak related costs. If a customer moves from ETS, they're currently causing us no peak related costs, and they move to time of day or not time of day, they move to heat pumps, right? It's not just the 0.5 cent that the light plant and all the rate players are going to bear, it's all the peak related costs as well.
But they'll be
So there is a
paying the
benefit.
peak pricing. Sorry, I can't, they're paying the higher rates with a heat pump because they're paying full distribution with other heating systems. If someone heats their house with a heat pump, they're paying distribution on every kilowatt full price. Same with resistance heat, with, electric baseboard and other such.
But
They
I
don't-
think, but if I understood correctly, that, and it's true, you're going to pay a higher price with the heat pumps, but the CMLP does not control when the heat pumps turns off or on, right? So the heat pumps, it will be an additional demand. A customer will be paying the higher rate for that use of energy, but nevertheless, it will be energy that will be consumed at peak hour that's not controllable by CMLP, right?
Correct.
Yeah, thank you. John Dalton. And you're on mute. You need to be unmuted by
Yeah.
Jason.
I think one way to answer the question that's been posed in terms of what does this cost other customers is, right, the rates that we have that have been proposed show the under recovery that ETS customers are making. And right, we're estimating that to be in the neighborhood of about $900 per customer. So, but that's just trying to answer that question. So, but really to get to the kind of the heart of the matter is, I've heard the comments that have been put forward in terms of trust. I think it's a really important issue that the board needs to weigh. But I think that, our job is to kind of balance interests for all customers, right? And there are other customers that are being adversely affected by the rate deal that ETS customers have. My thought in terms of how to balance this trust issue is to recognize that there was a commitment that was made, but that commitment, doesn't have, there needs to be constraints on that commitment. And I feel like some of the analysis that Laura did looking at payback period, I take Hal Iverson's comments in terms of payback period doesn't provide for a return, but it is indicative of the period over which, customers should be able to recover the investment that they made. So I guess what I would propose would be that we do some, and we use the payback analysis or refined payback analysis where we make a return assumption and essentially say that after a certain period of time, 15 years conceivably, customers, would lose the benefit of their of the ETS rate, and that they would begin to transition. They wouldn't necessarily jump to the full time of day rate, but they would transition to time of day rates over a period of time. And one of the things that we've heard from all the ETS customers, not all, but many, is that they're looking for kind of greater rate certainty. And I think this would be a way to provide that, to indicate after X number of years, you're going to transition over a certain period of time to the full cost of service based on, the recent cost of service work that was done.
Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, John made a lot of really great comments there, and I generally agree with his sentiment. Just a couple of technical points. So a heat pump is roughly 3 times more efficient than one of these ETS systems. So while you can't control the peak is smaller potentially because it's a heat pump using a refrigeration system versus electric resistance. In the life cycle costing, I have oil heat and I hate it. I can't wait to figure out how to get rid of it, but it's dollars and other issues there. I spend a lot every year on maintenance, and I'm not sure that was really reflected in that life cycle costing of the oil alternative. I had the burr saw out at my house today or yesterday, and they're coming back tomorrow because I got to get a circulator pump fixed and all kinds of other good things. So there are downsides to all these systems. It seems pretty clear to me now that there may have been some benefit to the light plant and the customers to give this ETS rate back when it was given. It doesn't seem like that benefit exists in any great amount anymore. But there's an implied contract that the CLMP made with these folks, and I think the appropriate approach is something along the lines that John outlined. So a eventual phase out over time, but not something sudden. And I really like the idea of some sort of plan to that phase out with the ability for people to understand and predict going forward. I think that makes a lot of sense. The final comment I want to make, I heard somebody say that they had no agency here. And so, I'm on the light board. I'm fairly new to the light board, but I am here to represent everybody in the town and their interests of everybody, not just the people who show up at the hearing, but also the people who show up at the hearing. And we serve ultimately at the pleasure of the town manager and the select board. So you do have agency in all of this, and your voices get heard. We listen. And personally, I take this very seriously that I want to do the right thing for everyone on this call and also everyone in the town who's not on the call.
Thank you. Brian.
Yeah. My conundrum with ETS is the rate. If someone has ETS in the early 90s or 2006 with the philosophy that they don't pay distribution because they're already paying distribution with their usual electricity consumption, why are we not applying that to all EVs and heat pumps and other devices? If we say, okay, there's a fixed cost recovery of distribution, we're going to charge everybody $80 a month, and that's how we're going to collect it, and there'll be no variable, then this wouldn't really be an issue. But because we collect distribution in the kilowatt hour fee, and we've decided to exclude ETS, that is not fair to the heat pump customers, to the EV customers, to any other customers that add load. And time of day rates are to get us away from these special rates. They're based on our expenses. They reflect the cost for when electricity is consumed. So, a heat pump running and experiencing peak expenses is paying peak rates to collect for those expenses. ETS is controlled and will always be controlled to make sure that it's in the off-peak or super off-peak times that we have in the time of day rate to increase our load during those times, as well as to, make it the most cost-efficient way we can provide electricity. The problem is that off-peak rate or the super off-peak is still, over 5 cents away from the ETS rate we have today. And I am fully supportive of John's idea of a transition period to getting to those off-peak rates, but it's $130,000 a year that other ratepayers are paying to subsidize the ETS customers that are, they were 140. You've reflected that there are a few systems that have gone off. We have about 81% left. It looks like there's going to be a lot getting to the 20-year mark in the next, 3 years. So maybe we make a transition that is 4 years to the off-peak value and have, that amount of time. But one thing I don't want is for us to leave this meeting without a decision on how we're going to get from where we are today to, an unsubsidized rate that is reflective of the expenses they create.
Bianca, Hal, I will give you a chance to speak in a few minutes, but I want Bianca to go first.
Yeah, I wanted to get clarification on the cost. I think Brian, you mentioned, and it's come up quite a bit, the cost to the town. You mentioned 130,000. Is that really a cost to the town, or is that the collective benefit to ETS? Because there's a difference there. Is that because if ETS were to go away, does that mean that our cost would go down by 130,000?
My understanding is yes, because if you lose those customers, it reduces our expenses for buying electricity. We lose the load shifting, which is maybe half a cent, which is a rounding error. So I don't think it would have any big impact.
Well, you wouldn't necessarily
Laura
lose
can-
the customer, but Laura, I mean, Laura, so I'm getting conflicting views here. The first thing that Laura said was that there was no cost to the town, right? There may not be any benefit, the huge benefit, the large benefit that had been foreseen for ETS is no longer there, but that from what I heard, Laura, is that there also no cost, right? There may be the $130,000 may be a current benefit that accrues to them, but there is no that's on a retail level, but on a wholesale cost level, it didn't seem there was any.
So if the ETS customers all went away tomorrow, they all changed in their systems, and let's say they went to oil or to natural gas, just to make it a clean example, the light plant would actually lose a little bit of money because currently the ETS customers are paying a distribution. They are paying towards distribution. They are paying 2 cents currently toward distribution. So it's not just that, they need to cover their cost for the energy, and we're not losing money on that. They're paying the full energy, plus they're paying 2 cents. So if they were to go away, we would lose the 2 cents and everybody would pay more.
I just want to add to that every kilowatt hour of electricity that we sell has a distribution cost. And so that 2 cents that Laura mentioned does not cover that. And that is the lines, the transformers, the meter. Like there are other ancillary costs that would add up over the life of that system to something more than 2 cents. So if you isolate the ETS amount and say it's just a totally separate thing and it doesn't actually add to distribution load, then Laura's right that it would save ratepayers money by them going away. But the reality is it's more complex than that. And how do you factor in the ETS load, which is off-peak, which is generally not conflicting with other equipment, but it does strain the system in a way that every kilowatt hour does. And that's the cost that's murky to like, what is the break-even point of ETS distribution? But it's been moving toward cost of service, but our cost of service study consultants don't focus on breaking out the different types of usage. They just say that overall, to serve a kilowatt hour of power, this is how much we attribute to distribution costs. And right now, they're underpaying by an amount.
Yeah. I'm going to keep the discussion for the moment to the board because I do want to move that along. And I want to put my 2 cents in, and then we'll go to John. I could go with several different things here, but if I were to make where I come out on this, I look at those initial ads that were given to folks that said these systems have a life of 20 to 25 years. We have no commitment beyond 20 years to the customers. I would suggest that we pay customers the ETS rate for a 20-year period, and after that, they go off and go on time of day rate. The other thing I would do is I would go back to the initial percentage at the time the ETS rate was first established. And if it was 50% of the retail rate, I would adjust it a little now because it seems, in fact, ETS rates have been going up less than other rates. But that's where I would probably come out on this, but other folks may have other opinions.
I think, Warren, if we did that, we'd be back here in, whenever that time frame comes up, and we'd be having the same discussion again, just like we did in 2014.
Why would we? Because we
Because
would
there's
have a
no
rate where everybody
transition.
would automatically be going off the ETS rate.
And then we'd have a new board with a whole bunch of ETS people complaining about the rate spike of $900 a year. We go around the circle again. It needs some kind of transition period where people know the rate is coming up and know the end game. Saying that there's a deadline, 4 years from now, people will forget, and we'll be back here doing this again.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying what I was proposing was the right thing, but that seems as clear an endpoint as anything else. But Chris.
Oh, he's muted.
Working on it. Sorry, there's a button in front of his.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. I need to remember not to hit the mute button after I'm done talking. So I guess a clarifying question from Warren's proposal. Light Plant must have dates that the ETS went in service for everyone.
We do.
Yes.
And so I think what John was suggesting is we'd have a phase out for everybody and be all the same date. And what it sounds like, Warren, you're suggesting is that it would be custom for each customer, that
Well,
they would
I
get their
think
20
John
years.
was suggesting the same thing. He was just not necessarily suggesting 20 years. He was suggesting.
Okay. Yeah, and there's some logic to that. I mean, I think about my solar, and I had 10 years of RECs, and I knew that date was coming, and now that date is gone, and I no longer get that same benefit. The difference here is that I knew that when I signed up for the solar panels at the beginning, not finding it out as I'm going along. But I do think we can't write a blank check, and so some time period that is equivalent to the typical life of the system to have that phase out makes sense. I do like the idea that there would be a stepped phase out versus just a one day the price changes on you. I think that's a recipe for disaster as far as the individual customers.
Bianca.
Yeah, I'd like to just share some of my impressions. And I think for the customer, I hear a lot of trust coming up as an issue. As a board member, and from the point of view of the light plant, I think the credibility is the word that comes to mind. We advertise these things. We got people in them. Things have changed, but what I have not heard is a very clear answer as to whether there is a cost of these ETS systems to the overall system of the town. I think Brian's number, the 130,000, seems to be more of a retail benefit to the ETS customers as opposed to a cost to CMLP. Jason mentioned that the rate analysis, that the cost of service analysis that was done didn't really do a breakout on the ETS. At this time, I don't understand if and what the cost is to the town. And I think that needs to be clarified for as much for our own credibility as well as to ensure that there's trust from our residents.
Yeah, Bianca, the 130,000 is money that ETS is not collected for, and other ratepayers need to cover that expense. So that's what it is. It's there's $135,000 worth of expenses covered by the other 6,000 or 6,700 ratepayers. That's what's going on, and it's not just, oh, they're saving money, let them save money. There's other people that are paying those expenses. And that's my whole issue is that, well,
But
hey,
Brian, I think that the cost of service, folks who looked at this didn't come up with this number that I
they
think as
have
far
in the
as,
last two cost of service studies. This one didn't call it out specifically, but there, if you look back at the Baker Tilly, you look back at the others, they all call it out as an unfair rate for the rate class because others are paying
and you're
100.
talking, you're speaking to the distribution cost of this, right? The
Yeah.
distribution cost of this energy, of
The
this power.
expenses that the utility collects for and the way that we collect them would dictate that they would pay the distribution just as if they had a heat pump or an EV. But because this program was set up in the 90s and it's had a reference to paying just energy, you got confused when Laura kept saying that it's, a half penny off of energy expense. That means that it's collecting nothing for distribution. So even though the rate says it's 2 cents, the time of day, the best way to think about it is there's a 6.5 cent difference between the current ETS rate and
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, but here's the point that, as a board, as, representing both the residents and, and the board, we look a little foolish not to have known that at the start, right? So what does that make us? I mean, in terms of credibility, whether this was done in the 1990s or 2014, that was like, not that long ago, we were still offering this.
And we stopped because of this exact conversation.
Right. But I guess what I'm saying is that it's still the clarity around that, and is not, and I think Jason mentioned it, it's not as clear cut as just distribution costs because of the benefit that CMLP controls exactly when that power is dispatched, right? So if there was, for whatever reason, some weird winter where there was a peak in the middle of the night, who knows? CMLP has full control over that. I just want to make sure that we protect our, not only we continue to be a trustworthy partner for residents, but that we also, consider the credibility of the board in terms of like the clarity of what we're doing. And if this does need to be phased out, and if everyone agrees it needs to be phased out, I would be on board with that, but it would need to be a contract going forward, that we state, okay, over the next 15 years, this is the phase out rate, or at the 15-year mark, this is when it steps up to something else. But this was something that
Thank you, Bianca. We should move on. John.
No, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty close to where Warren is. I do feel like, and I agree with Brian, there is an adverse impact on other customers. And I think Brian's estimate is right. That number is about $130,000 per year. And we have to, balance the interests of all customers. I hear the points that are being made in terms of, trust and credibility. It's a critical issue. I think what I'm proposing is not extreme. I think it's, represents a reasonable balancing of the interests of ETS customers and other customers. And I think that's the job of the board, is to kind of balance all these interests. And that's, I'll stop there.
Thanks. I'm going to go to Jason in a moment, but I wanted to put my 2 cents in on one issue. I do think there is an adverse impact on other customers, but I don't think that the ETS customers should be asked to eat that entire impact. And the reason I say that is CMLP encouraged these customers to purchase a system that is relatively inefficient. And therefore, they're using a lot of electricity. And if we charge them a kilowatt hour distribution charge, they're paying disproportionately high share of CMLP's total distribution because of the fact that they have a relatively inefficient system, and they wouldn't have had that if CMLP hadn't done that. And so my sense is that there is an adverse impact, but the ETS customers, that CMLP should, in a sense, take responsibility for some of that adverse impact.
Could I add another concept to the discussion? One of the barriers is the cost to transition to a heat pump system and other such. Could we offer ETS customers a doubling of the heat pump rebates to encourage them to convert to a system that pays its way? And we because this whole discussion should be remembered forever about how we should not create incentive-based rates. Rates should collect for expenses based on how we use it, and it shouldn't be a technology incentive in a rate. Those incentives should be rebates and upfront pricing. So I think that would, we should give them encouragement to transition, because most of these systems, about 40% in the next 2 years, are going to get to the 20-year mark. So they're going to be aging out anyway.
Thank you. Jason's had his hand up for quite some time.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, Bianca was trying to get to the bottom of understanding the fairness and the implications for other ratepayers. I wanted to just remind the board that rate making is an art. After you take the cost of service study and you understand what the implications are for each rate class, the board makes strategic decisions about how to allocate those costs. The residential rate class is subsidized by $2 million by the general service rates. So when we're talking about $130,000 spread out among other customers, think about the fact that we do have other situations where certain groups of ratepayers are subsidizing other ratepayers, sometimes to the tune of a much higher amount. And then the other thing I'll mention is that when we give out rebates, like a $10,000 whole house heat pump rebate, those are borne by customers that may not necessarily be receiving those benefits. So there is a long precedent for the board trying to follow the will of all of the people, all of the ratepayers, to initiate programs. And sometimes, like Brian said, they are well-intentioned, but create a lot of havoc down the road. But for basically trying to create policies to create incentives or behaviors that are conducive to ratepayers or to further the goals of the town. And also just mention that if we doubled the heat pump rebate to, say $20,000 for a whole house, and there's 104 customers left and they all did it, that would be $104,000 if everybody took it. So not an insignificant amount of money as well. But
So,
something we've also
I think, unless a board member wants to object to this, listening to this discussion, I've heard some good ideas on the table. I think the board's going to need some additional time before we make a decision, and I think we should take all these comments under consideration and come back and reopen the rate hearing at the next meeting and resolve this. And that'll give people time to think about it and what we'll definitely propose. And what I am, in the interest of time, I am going to, after hearing this, give the first three people who've had their hands up, Hal, Tristan, and Curtis, a chance to speak, and then end the discussion for the day there. But are board members comfortable with, I've heard comments, especially from like Bianca, saying a lot of this information's new. It just seems it would be inadvised to make such a quick decision today about this. Does anybody disagree with that?
I certainly don't disagree. I mean, I would like to see a clear proposal on the table, I guess, which I don't quite see yet. So I think we need some time to come up with what that looks like.
Yeah, thank you.
I'd like three options on, how are we going to transition? Are we going to transition the whole cohort on a phased program? Are we going to do it at a deadline? Are we going to do individuals to a deadline? Are we going to do a rebate or not rebate? Just write down the options so that we can have a single choice to pick, and have a decision. Because I don't think without it written down, we're going to make that.
Yeah, I think you're right. We need to come back with the next meeting with, here are 3 different things we could do, just like you said, and weigh those. So we're going to get comments from 3 people here.
But Warren, can I just, on those 3 proposals, I'd also like to add, if possible, that we provide, and whether it be with those 3 proposals or not, just some guidelines for how we promote new technologies going forward. And I think there hopefully will be new technologies. We need new technologies. We will need adoption of new technologies. But hopefully those can be on a contractual basis going forward. And if we can add that, that would be my preference.
Okay, thank you. I mean, let me just say, I think the direction which we've been heading with new technologies is that everybody pays the same rate, which is the time of day rate. And the way we promote new technologies is through things like the heat pump rebates, where people get a one-time payment up front. But let's see if there are alternative ways people want to talk about that. So we have 3 people who are going to make comments now, and then we're going to end all the comment period. Hal.
Thank you. Chris, I want to welcome you to the board, and I want to thank you for your comments. We tend to be your biggest fans. We love CMLP and we love our light board. And yes, we have agency through you, but we are utterly reliant on the board in this case. I guess that's the point I want to make. And I'd like to get a specific answer to Pete Monahan's question, which is essentially, what's at stake here for the $1,000 that you're going to ask me to pay every year? What is the benefit? What is the benefit that the other ratepayers are receiving? I did my back of the envelope calculation, and it came out to about $15 per R1 customer. They're not going to notice that. They won't know it happened. Yeah, I know, Brian.
I'm sorry.
There's an objective fairness question here, and you win. But there's a subjective fairness question here, and you lose. We're going to notice it. It's going to hurt. And what's really at stake for the other R1 customers? We're going to phase out on our own. You just leave us alone.
Well, just to reiterate, Hal, I've always stated that there should be a transition. It shouldn't be rate shock. It shouldn't be that you get hit with, a 6.5 cent increase tomorrow. That's not how you treat people. But you understand my point about how the fairness objectively is what the board is tasked to do.
Okay, how about the meter charge? How about the business rate?
Hal, let me go on to Tristan next.
Hi guys, sorry, I'm trying to figure out my my Zoom.
You just turned yourself off.
There you go. Sorry, I'm balancing getting my kids out the door to throw. Okay. Thank you very much. First of all, again, this is an amazing use of civic discourse, and I appreciate all of the different, the respectful disagreements and discussion. It's really, really awesome. I think one of the things, just subjectively coming in here as a new resident, not having been a part of the conversation in the early 2000s in the marketing, I push back. I think, Brian, I both hate one of your perspectives and love your other one. And I mean that with all the love of my heart. I do think the fairness thing gets into a philosophical conundrum that from a board perspective makes decision making more difficult, because to plant a flag on like a fairness subsidy thing, we would have to litigate how the marketing was and all the agreements, and it opens up a really deep sort of objective versus subjective thing. I think Bianca and others have said it better than I have, but basically, like, from what it seems like, the handshake agreement and the guarantees were owned and created by the light plant, and to then create a dynamic where we are saying that it's unfair that we're subsidized by a system that you created, it also creates an unfairness imbalance. And so I think it's hard to start to plant the flag on that sort of like justification of fairness if the whole system was created and owned by the light plant in the first place. So I think I would encourage caution when talking about fairness in that way. And it also probably is bristly for people because of their vested interests. The second thing that I love, which is this idea of, okay, we own this because it recognizes the unfairness of the situation we're in. So how do we make people whole? I think that speaks to that fairness imbalance. And I like the idea of like essentially subsidizing a transition away from this dynamic that was created by the kind of strange marketing and discussions when this program began. So I appreciate all of the perspectives. Bianca, you're a rock star. I think I love your energy, and I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you.
Hey, thanks very much, Tristan. Curtis, you're getting the last word.
Yeah, and I'll be short and sweet. As you consider things, and I hear a lot of people saying the imbalance relative to the town, I think you're going to have to, as you guys evaluate things, you have to drill into some of the individual homes, because asking someone like myself who went with the town, switched to ETS, and now and we've not realized the benefits. So some of those charts that talked about how much is being saved, I have found the ETS unit has not been very efficient. As I said earlier, I shared kind of the numbers relative to what I pay for electricity with a very modest home. So as you kind of look to transition folks, I think you need to look at the individual scenarios and how long those people have been customers, and actually what those customers really look like. If you're a baseboard hot water heater, the ETS works well. Switching over to heat pumps doesn't work so well.
Yeah.
So some thoughts.
Hey, thank you very much. So can we have a motion to exit from the rate hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second here.
Okay, Brian,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. If folks can take 10 more minutes, let's give 10 minutes to Jason for his director's report, and then we will close the meeting.
Thank you, Warren. I'll be very brief. This week is Public Power Week, and it's a time each year that we set aside to remember the contributions and sacrifices of all those employees who are in support of public power. We are trying to put out some posts on social media, remind the public about this wonderful asset that the town has, and also show some appreciation to our staff for everything that they do day in and day out to serve this community. I'm really proud to be a part of that. And I know that the staff here gives them the motivation every day to come to work, to know that the people that they're serving are here, showing up, having civil discourse about the future of their economic world. So it's a lovely thing. We're having a luncheon for staff on Thursday, and we're hoping that next year we can do kind of a bigger, more public celebration, as we have done in years past, where we've invited the public and families to come out. We did have a table at Sunday, organized by the Climate Action Committee, and I thank the staff who were there. I know Pamela, Ethan, and Kim were there, and then I think an EV specialist as well, giving out information on rebates and programs. I wanted to mention that we had 3 staff attend the annual conference for NISC, which is our software provider. They came back with some excellent ideas for how to improve efficiency as well as roll out some new benefits to customers in terms of maybe more visibility in Smart Hub for some of their usage information and just new features that I think will really help, and some of these at no additional cost. We found some collapsed conduit along the Cambridge Turnpike. This is an area where we had done some, put some underground conduit in a long time ago, expecting to underground a section of the road year after year, and we need to address that. This is unfortunately a road that's been somewhat recently paved, so we have to figure out the area and then figure out what we need to do to get that replaced and repaired so that we can continue to underground there. We've completed our 2026 power supply forecast as we continue to work on the annual forecast for the whole entire light plant. We've met with energy management to go over their forecast for next year, and we're also going to be meeting with other staff in the next couple of weeks. And hopefully, depending if there's time at the October 29th meeting, can give the board a preview of where we're looking at for the forecast. Our thought was, since we've already taken care of most rates already, we can give a preview in October, we can have a presentation in November, and then have the board have a final vote in December. And that will actually give the board time to digest and deliberate about the forecast. Sometimes things are happening in a 2-week span where there's not a lot of opportunity for taking feedback and making changes. So we kind of have a nice benefit with time of use or time of day rates being voted so early. I wanted to mention that we did have a PP5 application in front of ISO New England on the battery, which is in conjunction with the expanded solar at the landfill. It does look like that's going to get spun into a level 3 cluster study. And that just means that we have to wait for some analysis done on some really big regional projects that we will have to take into consideration when we submit our impact analysis. And that's going to add several months of lead time to the approval for that. So unfortunately, we're probably gonna have to wait until late spring, early summer. As soon as we get that information, they'll be able to move forward. But we do have a consultant who's working on this with us and advocating for us on behalf of the vendor that we're working with. And then I just want to give an update on the middle school bid, which is to say that we have received those bids. We're in the process of vetting. Unfortunately, the references that the bidders provided were not current. So we had to do some work with the vendors to dig up those references, and we've been scheduling those. We estimate those will complete probably this week, and then hopefully we can move forward and discuss with council and potentially the board about options forward with that once we know who the qualified responsible bidders are for the project. That's all I've got.
Thanks. Brian, you have a question, comment?
So you also mentioned in your written the Smart 3.0 program.
Yeah.
Do Concord residents qualify for that?
Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, but no, I don't believe so.
That would track with my understanding of 2.0.
Right.
All right.
It's important to understand what the state is doing, just because sometimes we do align ourselves with state programs, but that was just for context. That does not automatically apply to Concord ratepayers.
And the level 3 study, this can be a bureaucratic nightmare. Now, is the trigger for the study the utility scale array outputs plus the battery inverters, or do they look at systems saying, oh, you have batteries because you have solar, so we're not going to look at the solar inverters and the battery inverters and add them together. We're going to subtract them or manage them.
They're looking at our entire distributed energy resources, all of our solar that we have. And I think we've gotten away pretty lucky to date by maybe avoiding some studies that needed to happen in the past. So this might be an opportunity to kind of sweep everything in there to have it covered. We anticipated a level 3 study based on our information. We were unclear of when Order 2023 was going to take effect, and that is the order that mandates the cluster study as opposed to the kind of serial study that had been happening before. The cluster study was intended to actually speed things along because it can lump projects together. It can have the unintended consequence of lumping in a very small project like a 5 megawatt energy storage with a very big project like a 300 megawatt energy storage in another place that's happening nearby. And that one can have real impact. Those inverters, are going to have a much more noticeable impact than our small load is that's all going to stay behind, Concord's meter. But nevertheless, ISO did review all of the information that we have, and they felt like level 3 was required in this particular case. But our sense from talking to Dave Kavanaugh from E&E and others is that they're aware that we have got away without a big study before, and they're also aware of kind of the amount of DER we have today, and that they feel like this just kind of tipped the scale. So I don't think it was the project itself, it's just kind of the cumulative effect of everything we have.
Okay, great, thank you.
And Jason, are you going to report on broadband today?
Yeah, I put a broadband update in the packet. I'd say just the team is working on the rollout of XGS PON, which is the new generation of 10 gig technology, and that's been very consuming for the team. It's wonderful having a fully staffed broadband department. The network engineers are getting a lot of work done, and they're still trying to target the end of this year as a deadline for rolling that out. It's really dependent on some of the other vendors, like the integration between NISC and Calix, our broadband provider. If that can happen on schedule, then I think we're looking good. We'll have to take one more maintenance window where we move to our new routers, and then it will just be the cutover to the new equipment. And we preferred doing a one and done approach that was a little bit more money upfront rather than a stage thing that was going to be a headache or hassle over the course of years. So the good news is that once we're done with this upgrade, like we'll be done, every customer will be moved onto the new platform. Other places like Celco, who was moving to their next gen technology, they've been upgrading like a single customer at a time. And that can be administratively burdensome, but also confusing to advertise, different maintenance windows that may or may not apply to you. So hopefully we've got the final maintenance window will be like, all right, everybody's on the new platform. We can decommission the old equipment. That will save on power costs and on administration and software maintenance that we have to pay. So again, we're hopeful that that date's by the end of the year. We're sensitive to the holiday timeframe, just in terms of support being available at the highest level, and also just people's attention and availability for digesting what we're trying to say. So there may be some rescheduling if certain vendors have delays in the next couple of months, but we're still optimistic that it could be by the end of the year.
Thank you. Any questions for Jason about the broadband report? Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
A second.
And Bianca,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. And I would like to thank Jason and Laura for an excellent presentation today about ETS. Thanks the board for your good and respectful comments on ETS, and especially thank all the members of the public who showed up today to present their opinions. We will take them seriously. Thank you. Bye now.